Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Relentless Goal Achievers podcast. And today is going to be incredible. Now, before we get started, if you're not in the Facebook community yet, what are you waiting for? Get over to the Facebook community. Let's connect there. I want to talk to you. I want to meet you and just have a great time. And speaking of meeting people, let me introduce my incredible guest today, Mike Kotsis. He is an expert at teaching, facilitating, and coaching to help those with entrepreneurial spirit see greatness within and be in a flow with the present moment. Can't wait to dive into that. Mike is an expert EOS implementer. He's been doing that since 2012. For those of you who don't know what EOS stands for, it stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that. And with his wife, Jill. And I loved when you wrote your filled out, the application, not the application, the form for the podcast, said my girlfriend, my girlfriend of 16 years and my wife, Jill. I love that. They've helped over 100 couples have a more connected, more exciting, and unconditionally loving family. That is huge these days. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. Stay curious. I absolutely love your shirt because on this side, it's all about curiosity. Coming from a sales background, it's all about curiosity. So we're going to talk about a couple different things today, but I want to start out with this EOS concept. Could you explain to us what that is?
Sure, absolutely. It's EOS is a methodology. It's a framework, a system that was developed here in Michigan by Gino Wickman, and it's a way of the simplest way to describe it. It's a way of harnessing human energy in a small business to get everybody, all the employees, everybody rowing in one direction to define a clear vision, help them be more accountable and disciplined to gain more traction, and do it in a healthy way where everybody in the leadership and throughout the company are a healthy, cohesive team and working through all the stuff that surfaces in the natural part of running a business.
So you got into that in 2012, but before that you were a part of your family business, like a 3-generation long old family business. Why did you make the switch?
Yeah, so I was running our family business. So we're a Greek family. We're in the food service distribution business. We had 7 family members involved, and we didn't know about EOS at the time. We did it our own way. It took us a considerable amount of time to get the team moving in one direction. And on that journey, I found myself having conversations with other colleagues, other people in next generation family business owner groups, of helping them to work through the same stuff we worked through. And I was creating my own way of doing that. And it was on that journey that I discovered EOS and said, wow, I was both excited and pissed when I discovered it. I was excited. I'm like, this is a brilliant system. This is simple. This will cut down the time of actually having the conversation about what to do. We could get the work of doing it. And I was pissed because I wish I knew about it 7 years earlier, because it would have helped us to have some of the conversations that needed to happen in a more crisp, succinct, simple way. I overcomplicated them is another way of saying it.
Yeah, I think as leaders, we have a tendency to do that. So EOS, did you implement that with the business, or that was something that came out later?
In the family business, no, I didn't. I did have one of my colleagues help our family business later do that. I was too close to it, and I wanted somebody that didn't have all the history with it, that could more objectively look at it. And so that was after I moved on and started creating this with other entrepreneurs, other leaders, and other small businesses.
So is this something for small business, medium size, or could work with both, large?
Yeah, so typically the sweet spot are companies 10 to 250 employee size organizations, any industry, privately held. It does work I have some companies that are 1,500 employees and larger. But sometimes when they get that large, they have so much infrastructure and so many things in it. Sometimes they become more bureaucratic and they're not as open to change. They don't have that entrepreneurial spirit. But if they have the entrepreneurial spirit and they're open-minded, it'll absolutely work for organizations that are larger.
Yeah. What do you mean by the entrepreneurial spirit?
The owner, the leader, the key leader or leaders having this open-mindedness, this, well, I guess the stay curious, the curiosity to create and not have to have it be a certain way. So, a privately held organization typically will have that, as opposed to a publicly held organization where, they're beholden to shareholders, and they'll either stack up sales at the end of the year because they need to meet a certain number. And it's more about that than it is the passion and the drive of what we do and why we do it. And getting really clear around what is our purpose, what is our cause, what is our passion, and really upholding that along with the unique culture through our core values of the organization. When they have that, and that resonates with the key leader and ultimately the leadership team, like we're in a place of creation and creativity as we create what we want going forward in the future, not so that it has to be a certain way, but so that we can really serve our customers and serve our people very profoundly.
So when you go into an organization, like what's step one in EOS that no matter what company is it always the same step one?
After an initial conversation, yeah, typically it's, if that initial conversation resonates for both us and the key owner, the key leaders, that we would have what we call a 90-minute meeting. And so in a 90-minute meeting, I invite the leadership team to my sacred space, and we meet together for 90 minutes to get a better sense about what's going on with them, give them some background about me and the process. And then we paint a picture of what it looks like, what it could look like if their company were running the way it was intended with less effort. And then we walk them through the process of how we achieve all the results we achieve with our clients. There's the template way that it looks. Every client is a little bit different, right? So you got to really customize and meet them where they're at, but it's the same foundational principles that we tackle along the journey.
But my question is, like, once they say, yeah, this sounds great, what's step one? What's the first principle? I'm just curious, like, what's the number one thing that, when you're implementing the EOS system, you guys look at?
Well, the first step and the first full day together after we decided to go forward and we're going to do this. I don't really know what it's going to look like or how it's going to feel. Like that's where most teams come into it. They're excited and a little bit terrified. And the very first big thing that we cover is what we call the accountability chart. Instead of creating the great vision work, we go to the root and create their accountability chart. It's like a supercharged organizational chart, getting clear of what is the right structure for the organization, what are the roles that need to be played. And then we do a real-time performance review on each other, in front of each other, giving each other feedback on whether they get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it. And so that usually opens up some oh crap, we don't have all the right people around the table, or this is what we really there's some real heart to heart, there's some real conflict that surfaces in that first day together. And then there's more, but that's like the key piece that we start with, because then once we build that, creating a vision later is a lot more realistic, because then we really know who owns what as we create the vision. And then they'll be more bought in to say, that will work, or no, that won't work. This is how we do. They're much more engaged, and we go to work at getting those people, the right people around the table.
Wow. Has it always been like that since 2012, or have you guys changed the system a little bit?
No, that's the fascinating part for me, is that it hasn't changed. I was one of the first 30 implementers that started with the system, and Gino and Don had been doing it for 15 years prior to that. And it's the same core 20 tools all across. It doesn't change. Nothing gets added or subtracted. It's really dialed in from its simplicity. The key is the people piece of it and facilitating people along that journey and meeting them where they're at. But the core is still the same.
So when you're looking back, it's been over a decade. You look back at your last 11 years of doing this. What is there a proudest moment? Like there was a client you had that was at this place, and then by the time they went through the process and implemented, they had this success to show for it?
Yeah, there's so many, there's several. The key is that what I see along the journey, if I were to just to even pick one that I'm thinking up in Northern Michigan, that, they had used a few other methodologies and frameworks, and they had gotten some good progress. They were really gaining momentum, growing their business. And when we implemented EOS, one of the things that they said to me is that this leadership team had worked together for at least the previous 10 years minimum, like everybody that was there. And they didn't realize that they learned something new about each other on the journey that they didn't even think were possible along this way. And they built a manufacturing plant they have some food products that they serve out in the high-end specialty market. And they had been trying to do that for years, and they got it in the ground within that first year. And they said that they never made that kind of progress before, and were able to really push back on the key owner and founder without feeling like they were stepping on toes or offending. And that's what the key founder really wanted. Like, he wanted that real feedback. But there was this funky dynamic that you get into with when you know somebody for so long, you get into this habitual way of being, a habitual way of working together that just becomes default. And we kind of wake people up to that so that they can start looking at what is useful for the greater good of the company.
Yeah. Wow. So the last, I think, 4 times I've done a podcast with someone who was recommended by Steve Hardison, I always started out with, okay, here's how we met. So I'm going to do this, but I didn't want to start out with that again.
Yeah.
I just did Chris Smith, and I had a great interview that just released. It was the last episode that was released. And
I love Chris.
Oh, he was so good. Such a great conversation. So similar for those of you who are listening, I reached out to Steve Hardison after I read the book with an email. Hey, Steve, loved everything about the book. Would love to interview you. Watched his videos on YouTube. And he called me. That nobody does that. Calls me up, says, hey, thanks so much for thinking of me. I'm calling to let you know I will not be coming on your show. Don't do those. But I do have a few people. And one of the people he recommended was Mike, along with Ankush and Kusudi and Chris Smith. So if you guys are going back through and listening to good conversations, every single one of those conversations has been just tremendously impactful. And I'm getting any feedback that I get about those have been just off the charts. So I'm going to ask you the same thing, and all of you are all humble, but why do you think Steve picked you? I mean, he's got so many clients in his book. There's, I don't know how many dozens of people who have said great things about him. Why did he think you would be a good guest here?
That's a great question. I hadn't thought about it. Let me check in. What I think why he would have chose me to be in this conversation with you is probably because of my past in the way that I've unintentionally created my life. I had been so achievement oriented, so goal focused, but coming from a place of faith. So when I say place of faith, I have a practice in Orthodox Christianity and knowing that Christ is within me. And when I realized a few years ago, or several years ago, I realized that my actions weren't in alignment with what I truly knew up here and believed, but I was practicing something a little bit different. I was putting my happiness or delaying that out in front of me. And when I saw that, I immediately flipped for my personal life, because what we haven't shared is that all the EOS tools that I work with leadership teams, I applied to my family right off the bat. So my wife and I, my girlfriend Jill, we created what we call the Purposeful Family Manager years ago, in helping entrepreneurial couples define and get what they want out of life and do it together in a way that other entrepreneurial couples can really get on the same page with communication and share dreams and all of that. And it was really amazing. And what we found is that there was a depth that was missing and we couldn't quite put our fingers on until we start seeing it for our own life. And when we released our expectations of outcome, when we released the expectations of whether we achieve the goal or not, and focused more on being in the present moment and seeing what that present moment had for us, everything else just started showing up in our life in a totally different way. And so I believe he chose me is because of the integration of all of life, the view that I have of focusing on us and our family first, and then all the other pieces come into that. And it's not about that in lieu of our family in our life. It's that as part of it.
Wow. Tell me about your family. So it's your girlfriend, Jill. And what about your kids?
We have 4 children. So we have 4 children. Zachary is 12, Lenny's 10, Sammy's 7, and our youngest Penelope, she's gonna be 5 next week.
Wow. And how do you be in the present moment when with 4 kids? Like I have 2 kids, and I'm always wondering, okay, when do I do this? When do I take them here? How do I, who's picking them up? What's for dinner? What's for lunch? How do we spend time together? That's always plus the business, right? If you're an entrepreneur, how do I still make time for my wife? I'd love to hear about like your day for not what you do, but how do you prepare or plan or think as a family about what to do?
Yeah. So our lives have shifted so much in the last couple of years that it looks so different than it did before. I want to give you a little bit of background. I'll lead into that question and you help direct me where appropriate, which I know you will. Our kids went to a classical Christian school ever since our oldest 2 were in kindergarten up until 2 years ago. And what we realized for our own lives is that they were in 5th and 4th grade, our oldest 2, and there was a lot of doing. There was a lot of activities in school, a lot of activities after school. We had a great community that we really loved, and we loved the people. But we noticed the flame for learning started to dull down a little bit in our oldest 2. And school became more of a have to than a want to. And when we saw that, Jill and I reflected on our own journeys. It was about that age, plus or minus, for our own lives that we had to learn how to get good at being in school. And so we did. She and I really did. What I remember from it, though, I don't know. I don't remember a lot of what I learned. I remember learning it, but now I feel like I'm learning it again this time. And so we said that in our own lives with Jill and I. Jill is a graduate of USM, the University of Santa Monica, just this past year. She finished 2 years there. And we've been on this coaching path and journey for ourselves for so long. We said, well, what if we didn't have to go through, the 40 years of our life to unlearn non-useful habits and really learn to listen to the whisper of God within us and keep that childlike spirit as we grow? Like, what if we didn't lose that or bury it underneath everything else of the way of the world? And so our great experiment was we worked with our kids to talk about creating what we call Soul School. And Soul School is completely different than everything else. The most similar term would be unschooling in the world, which is a self-directed learning. And learning to work on their relationships, learning to listen and follow their passions on a day-to-day basis. So every day looks very different. So I want to give you a little bit of this color on here too. So on top of, like, they still do activities, they have other groups of friends and things that they do. But our planning looks different. We were very regimented in our planning and the way that we structured and figure out what we wanted. We set up a calendar. We work off of a shared calendar on a practical terms for our family and our social life and our business. And what we do is, I start the day, for me, getting practical is in prayer and meditation. And prayer and meditation and centering myself and getting to a place that of gratitude, of complete gratitude, and coming into creating how I'm going to show up for the day. regardless of what kind of day it is, whether it's a Saturday and we've got football and family birthday party coming over like we do tomorrow, or it's a client session day where the clients are coming for a leadership team session or a one-on-one session. Every day is a little bit different, but the way that I show up is I pray for the Holy Trinity to flow through me and to hear what needs to be heard and to speak what needs to be said, and trusting that the right thing that will come up. You've said this to Mike of a few years ago. No way. I got to have a plan. I got to have it prepared. I have to rehearse it. I have to figure it out and all of that. And I never realized how much energy that was consuming in me. And I would miss what was the goal of what was really happening.
That is so good. Let me ask you really quick. You mentioned that you practice Orthodox Christianity, and then you mentioned your kids went to a classical Christian school. Is there a difference between Orthodox Christians and classical Christians in the belief?
So classical refers to the method of teaching, classical teaching style through logic and rhetoric. And just the way that it's actually where our founding fathers of the U.S., the education system that they had back then, that was really incredible, of just inducing critical thinking and in the spirit of play from a young age. And so Orthodoxy, if you've heard of Catholicism, it was all one church a couple of millennia ago and split in the year 10,054.
What was the belief difference between Orthodox Christians and Catholics or other Christians?
Most of it's fundamentally the same. Some of it has to do with really there's no pope in the Orthodox Church. There's 5 patriarchs that the church, and it's auto-governing through that way. So there's no one single person that's ahead of the church. It's through ecumenical councils is the main difference. Then there's some other differences through the creed and other pieces there. But still, it's, both churches would believe in Jesus as the Lord and Savior, believe in the Holy Trinity through everything and everyone.
Yeah. So what's interesting to me about Christians is most of them, I think you may be the first one that I've heard that says, I believe that Jesus lives in me. Everybody else believes they're a sinner and, Jesus died for them and lives outside. And you said lives in me. Is that like a controversial belief? Like, do other Christians look at you and think like, I don't know who he thinks he is?
I believe for me, it's a true belief, and it's through, there are so many different denominations of Christianity nowadays today. There's so many different interpretations of what happened. So part of it is through the apostles in terms of succession. There's oral tradition that's been passed down for the last couple of millennia that the Orthodox Christians uphold, along with the teachings in the Bible. And so there's a lot of different interpretations. So whenever I talk about this with anybody, it definitely stirs stuff because everybody has their own belief system and the way they think things should work or have to work for them to be okay. And it's going to stir stuff. And that's cool. I respect that. I honor that. I don't force my beliefs on anyone else. I respect and honor their beliefs, whether they're Christian or not. And I believe that's the way that we were created. And so for me, seeing the divine light of God inside of me is a shift, because many years ago, I would pile a lot of pressure on myself. I would hold myself to a standard that I would never even hold anybody else to. And so the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. What about do unto you as you would have others do unto you?
Oh, that's a good one.
And so for me, like the realization is that if I'm holding myself to such a high standard, I'm judging myself. And I believe that every human being, regardless of belief, is a living image of God. Myself included. And if I'm judging myself, I'm judging God. when I saw that, when Steve helped me to see that, it was a wake-up call for me and say, well, why are you doing this? Like that, does that make any sense for you? And it's just, I saw it in a whole different way. And it softened my heart first towards me. And then towards everybody else.
That's so huge. So I'm, I don't think grew up Jewish, but I grew up in former USSR. I didn't grow up Jewish as like a religion, grew up Jewish as we're just Jewish. There's no religion in Russia when we grew up, you couldn't practice it really, except for communism. And so there was no religious background whatsoever. And later in life, somebody introduced Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh to me. And I've always been around Christians through work, through like my military experience. So I was very curious about it, right? Like, how do people believe this, especially like with Islam and seeing what goes on there, and Judaism and Christianity and Seventh-day Adventists. Like, I had some friends in all over different religions, and it was very interesting for me to see without any beliefs, like what others believe, because I wasn't arguing it. I'm just like, well, at that, but a lot of times I'd just say, well, that sounds kind of stupid or silly, and I was immature at that point. Anyway, so I listened to this book. It's like a 36-hour trilogy, Conversations with God, and that's the first time it made sense to me. And one of the questions, it's like literally like a dialogue between this guy who's like sitting down and he's just at wit's end, right? Nothing's going right for him. And he just asked like, God, like what the hell, pretty much. And God says, do you really want to know? And then this whole conversation ensues. And one of the questions that's asked there by God is like, where do you think God ends and you begin? And it was so profound to me. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. So that means God doesn't end, right? Like if God's everywhere, first you got to believe that there is a higher power. I do. Yeah. If God doesn't end, that means God is a part of me. And if God's a part of me, then why do I worry? And that led down so many different rabbit holes. So I love talking to folks like yourself, because you're coming from a place of no judgment. You have your belief, even though you say, hey, I'm Christian, Orthodox Christian. I do believe that God lives in me, and there's this divine light that I'm a part of. And you show up in the world so differently when that happens, don't you?
Yeah.
That's incredible. So when you're working with families and implementing this EOS system, what are some of the challenges that you see families having, especially ones with teenagers? And then how do you help get everybody on the same page, rowing in the same direction, if that's even a goal for you?
Yeah. So a great question. So first I want to preface that we sunset the program in 2019 because of a deeper realization that we had. But during that time, I will tell you that, so although our kids were not they're just becoming teenagers now, so they definitely were teenagers then, there were several in the program that, because we taught it in a group setting where we had 8 to 12 couples in a workshop format, similar to like the way Strategic Coach has it set up for their programs. And, when they do it for individuals and entrepreneurs. And so for us, the big thing that we saw is that there was this genuine love for wanting their family to connect and to be healthy. And it got tripped up in the how, in the busyness of life. And so what I believe then, and I believe now, is the slowing down of the parents to work on themselves and their relationship first, before trying to fix or change, and I'm going to put this in air quotes, fix or change our kids or our teens to get them to be a certain way, to be okay. It's first coming back into, how am I reacting as the father? How is my wife reacting as their mother? How are we interacting with each other? And so that's where it starts, in us opening up our communication, slowing down enough to get the pause to reflect on, why was their behavior so irritating to me? What they did is not irritating in itself. It's what I make of what they did about me that makes it irritating.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's the work, right? So that's the work. And so it's like simple things like that I go way deeper on now that I wasn't even fully aware of then. That it really comes back to this, and knowing that through adolescence, teen years, and all, like, you got hormones and everything else that's stirring, and then, you know, kids, they're trying to find themselves. They're trying to find what their place in the world really is. And so the big piece of this is, well, last night, actually, it was a great conversation. I had a client gratitude celebration for my my EOS and my one-on-one coaching clients. And I had Steve Chandler over my house to come and do a talk for everybody. And he talked about creating great relationships at home and at business. And they're one and the same when we break it down and look at where we have expectations of somebody else that are not being said and agreed to. When I have an expectation that my kid cleans up his room and they don't do it and I get irritated, it's my issue. Well, instead, you propose is come up with an agreement. Come up with an agreement with them, which means you go back and forth and come up with an agreement, make it about the agreement. And when they're young, they're gonna be like, what? Agreements like this is like, they're gonna fall, right? But you keep bringing it back, make it a thing. When it's calm, have a conversation about what expectations and agreements are. And so you can come back and point back to that. Because otherwise, if I go around having expectations of them all day and they meet them, number one is I usually feel nothing because it's like what I expected. So I feel neutral about it. Like it's what I expected. Good, you did it. That's great. Or two, I'm disappointed because they don't meet the expectations. And then I get frustrated and then I parent from that place. Then they feel all kinds of judgment and resistance, and that doesn't usually work. At least it doesn't work for us.
Hey, real quick, I want to thank you so much for listening into this episode, and just bear with me. We got a 1-minute commercial coming your way. Have you ever blocked off time to do some lead gen or cold call or read a book or write a book, whatever that may be for you, and then when that time comes, you just simply don't do it? You find other busy things to do, like maybe check your emails and clean out your inbox, things like that. Well, look, if you find yourself doing that, you're not alone. Okay, if you're an entrepreneur, solopreneur, or someone in the field of selling, chances are there are areas of your life where you're not performing the way you want to perform. You probably feel alone. You don't know which steps you need to take next. Look, this is exactly why we created Relentless Goal Achievers. We're a group of growth-minded individuals who have an opportunity to meet 3 times weekly, although it's optional, 3 times weekly to talk about our goals, learn new things, and take our businesses and our life to that next level. Here, click the button below, see if you might be a good fit. I think this is the group you've been searching for. I'll see you in there. I had an aha moment literally just within the last week and a half, maybe. So I'm a product of a divorce, didn't grow up with any loving father in the home whatsoever. And at 14, I was pretty independent. Like my mom worked till God knows when. I barely, just ran the streets. And my son, my 14-year-old, still calls me daddy. And like when he comes home, he wants to hug me. So like he's 14. He comes home, he wants to give me a hug. And I'm always like kind of either twitchy, or I can't fathom the fact that a 14-year-old wants to hug another man. And I had to kind of take that out of the equation for a little while and sit down and realize that just because I went through that and I couldn't picture somebody else wanting to hug their dad, or I didn't have a dad to hug, that doesn't mean that my son doesn't want it, right? So I had to be somebody different. And it was such a realization because I like to think I've done enough personal development work that I would have caught that, but I didn't. And it opened up my mind. Like, what else am I missing here? What are the opportunities that I'm not seeing that are like right here because I'm in my own way, living life through my own experience of what it's like to be a 14-year-old boy, 30 something years ago.
I love that insight. That's beautiful. It really is. Cause this is the journey. It's right. Cause we're living I believe we're all doing the best we can with the past experience and the thinking that feels real to us. And what feels real to us is what we know and how we were raised. And we might not even be conscious of it. But I think, raising a family or having one child, like as they grow, like it's going to surface stuff that's been dormant for years. I mean, it happens all the time around here for us. And it's like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. It's like nothing you can plan for. And like, I wouldn't take we used to try to plan for this stuff. Yeah, it's, sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't. But when I show up more in the moment, it can help me to point back to like, what's going on with me first.
Mm-hmm.
So that I can at least question that or say, I need a little bit of time. Go into a breath. My wife is a saint at this. Jill, she leads our family soul school, and it's amazing. I mean, she's a guide, not as much a teacher. She doesn't have a curriculum. She helps to explore their own curriculum of their lives and helps guide them and helps them to create opportunities in those areas. And it surfaces stuff. It's 100% different than the way that we were raised and what we know in our mind from our own experience. And so as we journey on this, like we surface stuff for ourselves every day.
Yeah. As long as you allow yourself to see it, because it could just pass by in an instant and you won't have a clue that it was even there.
Right.
So soul school, did you guys take your kids out of traditional school and all they do is soul school? Or is that an addition?
Yeah.
Complete.
No, this is what they do. We made that decision to do this, that we're in our second year, I guess, formally of soul school. And, when we made that decision, we decided to create a new home because we didn't have to live where we lived. And we wanted to create a home where they could have a space to do that and have a place that was a real blessing. And so the real piece of soul school is not something just that we do with our kids. It's our way of life that we experience life together. And a big piece of that is relationship with each other. When our kids or when we irritate each other, it's taking enough of a pause between the stimulus and the response to see what is it that was being created in that moment. And the first several times that happens, it's challenging. But we take a step back, and I notice like there's a lot of growth that's happening in a very different way. And so we do that all from home, and it's travel and experiential adventure is a big part of our learning. So going places, bringing history to life. In May, we took a month road trip to the East Coast, and we went to Gatlinburg, Williamsburg, Jamestown, Savannah. We brought Revolutionary War and Civil War to life. And I frankly feel like I was learning a lot of that for the first time too. And it's cool. Like when we go to places, like there's like a different part of our body and our brain that's engaged, and we remember those experiences in a different way. And that's a big part of our journey.
Yeah. Are you opening up soul school for others, or just going to keep it for your family now?
We have no intent of creating a business out of it, but we share our journey with others that it can help and open up possibility for them. Because it's a different way of living, and it's something that nobody else in our circle that we know about, including in our family, our extended relatives, everything else, and it's it can raise a lot of stuff for a close family relationship. So, like, what are you doing?
Yeah. So one, I want to say I really appreciate the Viktor Frankl drop in this between the stimulus and response. There's a pause. That's one of my favorite books, is A Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask you is, how did you even create that? And I'm going to speak, I almost feel like a fraud asking this in this language because it's not my language. I think I've been around Steve Hardison's community now enough where I'm like starting to speak the language, which even feels weird.
Cool. Go for it.
Yeah. How did you even create the possibility of this type of lifestyle? Because I'm going to say, because maybe this is my internal thing, but most people will say, hold on, this guy's running a business with his wife and they got their kids out of school. They've created their own curriculum. They're traveling for a month at a time to show a lesson, on the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. And that I couldn't do that. I mean, I got to go to work 9 to 5. How did you get into that mind? Do you think it's because you grew up in an entrepreneurial home with the restaurant, or is it something else?
So I'm describing what our lives are like now, and it's not the flip of a dime,
Sure.
right? So it's a product of us staying open and curious of what we don't know. And not always, like, if you hear this in the business world or in the parenting world, when we think what we don't know, we want to go find a book and learn techniques, tips, and we've done a lot of that over the years.
Yeah.
And so what we don't know is what's surfacing from within us and learning to turn inwards. And so this has been a conscious practice for us, for Jill and I, for years, of continuing to seek and learn what we don't know from within us, and selecting the appropriate guides for us through our church and through coaches, to help us reflect our own thinking and what they're seeing. It's funny, Steve Chandler just shared a story of, like, when I first started working with him in 2016, he shared with everybody too. It's like, Mike, you described yourself to be very hardwired as very structured, very analytical, very protective, careful, and safe in the way that you lived your life. And so because you were describing through language your way, in this way, you were reinforcing and creating for yourself, like there was no other option. There was no other possibility. And so as over time, as he began to reflect these ideas, like, it doesn't have to be a certain way, it just slowly just started loosening the grip a little bit. So my playground got a little bit wider. I could breathe a little bit looser. And then eventually, like, over time with that practice, and then seeking with, like, is this boundary really real, or did I make it up without realizing it? And having somebody to help point me back to that has been so incredibly valuable, because it's the same thing from a business side. When we work with leadership teams, it's that when there's an old quote by Kurt Gödel, a philosopher, it says, you cannot be in a system and at the same time understand what the system is. You got to get out of it to work on it. And so coaching work for me, and through my priest and through my coaches and through worship and faith and through working with Jill together, like, and helping point it out for each other, has helped us to see it from a different angle that you can't see.
Do you remember, like, the first aha where you had certain parameters and you realized, like, wait, I put this border here?
I remember a significant one, like, for us, being achievers and driven and all of that, because we applied a lot of the EOS tools to our family life for 9 years. I remember one of the coaching sessions for me, I had, so in EOS, we call it a VTO, a Vision Traction Organizer, which is a 2-page document that has your business plan on it. And so we had the equivalent of that for our family. And so I had both of those sheets of paper that I said, this is what I'm all about, to my coach. And say, like, this is what I'm up to. Help, like, what do you see? Help me out. And I remember the question that he asked me, why are you doing this? That's all he said. Why are you doing this? And Eric, I sat there like this. I didn't have an answer. I would have had an answer years before, so that we can do this and this, or whatever it was. But it just in that question itself, it's the right time. My hearing was open enough to hear it in a different way. And I said, I don't know. And in that instant, I saw all the energy I was putting behind the creation of this. While there's good habits that we develop that serve us in our family and our business, I was putting more emphasis on the outcome than I was in the moment. I was delaying my gratification, my happiness out there in the future, back to what I was saying earlier. And that instant just shifted. I just saw things differently. I just all of a sudden saw things differently and started approaching life just from a more open and curious and looking for the miracle in the present moment and being willing to see like, hey, if it stirred stuff up, like it's not it that stirred stuff up, but it pointed back to something that I was carrying. And so as I start to let go of that stuff and take myself a little bit more lighter, looser, with a more joyful spirit, things just start showing up. And then I can have an intention. Eckhart Tolle talks about this, is that he talks about goal setting from the way of like, you know, if we have a goal and we put so much emphasis on the goal, we end up treating the present moment as a means to get to the goal or as an obstacle to get around so we can get to the goal. And it becomes so much rigid about that goal. Like that's the way I related to it in the past. And so I never really realized that. I woke up to that realization that when I can hold it looser, I can have an intention and be more showing up in this moment, things just tend to work out. And if it doesn't happen exactly, I don't get all twisted up about it anymore. Like it's not worth it. So I don't know if that makes any sense for you.
You're 70% there.
70%. Go back and forth.
Sense.
Ask me questions.
Yeah, because my company's called The Goal Guide, right? And
yeah.
when I was, you know, I shared this story back in 2014. I woke up, I felt like what I now call a sad clown. So on the outside, life was looking great. Happy marriage, boys, job, nice house, good income. Inside, no direction, hate where I'm at, have no idea where I want to go, feel like I'm up against the wall. And I'm the guy posting motivational posts on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
So I got introduced to my first coach, well, to a woman who happened to be a coach. And the reason why we got introduced is the guy said, hey, you two are the most positive people I know. You should definitely meet. I was the most positive, one of the most positive people he knew. And I'm like miserable inside. And when I met with her, I realized that, you know, I probably need a life coach at this point. I didn't even know that was a thing. So I hired her to be my coach. First thing we started working on were, what do I want out of life? Like came up with some goals, put a morning routine together. And now when I hear you say, you know, the goal is the thing, and the present moment now becomes like something you have to get through to get to the goal, or an obstacle. Like right now I have a goal to run a marathon. I signed up December 3rd. I wasn't the best runner when the year started, been training hardcore. And that's what came to mind for me. Like, shit, am I really enjoying this? I'm not enjoying the present moment. It's just getting through each run so I can get closer to this goal. So December 3rd, I can run 26.2 miles and say I did the run.
Yeah.
But then on the other side where you say, yeah, if I hold it looser and just enjoy now, I almost feel like that gives you the open door, or the ability to say, you know what, today I don't feel like running. I'm just going to lay in bed and cuddle, and it'll come.
Yeah, I love that reflection on here too, because that's going to help us to have a even more powerful conversation for two of us first, and then anybody else that listens to this, is that so there's different phases of life where, I mean, goal setting and habits are useful. They're very useful tools. Absolutely. I've used them all of my life in different ways. I guess what I'm hearing now in a way that is more powerful for me is if I swap the word goal for commitment, and coming from a place of being, if I'm being committed to run a marathon, right? It's not just like this thing that's out there somewhere in the future that I'm forcing myself to do. I'm pushing myself to do, because if I'm pushing myself to do it, then I'm inadvertently making myself miserable right now. And so if I'm inadvertently making myself miserable as I'm training for it, my body is feeling the response of the thoughts that I'm thinking, that I have to get through this. And if I bring some more presence to the training process, then the way that I can bring more presence to training process is that if I'm being committed to running the marathon, I show up in a way that that's the place I'm coming from. Like, I am running this marathon. I have run it. It's already done. I see it and I feel it being done in my mind. And if I show up and wake up in the morning that this marathon, like I am, and I have the intention of doing the best I can in this run, and I'm showing up, like that is the thing I might need to consciously remind myself of, that, because it's like, hey, if I haven't run a marathon before, like I'm coming from this place, like I am running the best marathon of my life. I'm going to show up in that day with practicing from that place of being the best marathon, running the best marathon, practicing for the best marathon. John Wood, it comes to mind as a quote, and I probably butcher the quote, but he comes back from the place of where he taught UCLA, right? How to, in their very first practice, to put their socks on first. Instead of getting out there on the court and going doing the basketball drills, he had them put their socks on first and pull their socks all the way up and getting all the wrinkles out and getting the little line above their toes and all that before they put their shoes on. And he called the practice complete after he did all that. Everybody's like scratching their heads, like, what do you think? What do we do this for? And the intention was behind that is that he builds championship teams. And so in order to win a championship, everything I do comes from the place that I am a champion. I treat this moment as a champion. And so champions are going to bring time and attention to getting their gear on correctly. So if I don't get my gear on correctly and there's a little ripple in my sock, it's going to create a blister. And that blister can cause me to miss a step. That misstep can cause me to sprain my knee, and then I'm out, and then I can't play, and I can't show up for that. Our team can't win if we're not on the court giving it our best. And so it starts with the little things of coming from that place of it already being done. And so that when I'm in the championship, it's psychological, like in my mind, it's no different than any other game. It's no different than any practice. I'm already practicing as if this is the championship right now. I am believing that with every fiber of my being.
How do you get past procrastination when you're being, right? Like, hey, I'm creating myself to be someone who does not procrastinate. So that means I take immediate action on my aligned thoughts on the work that needs to get done. I do the work ahead of time. And so then I know this here. And then it's time to do the work. And a little voice pops in and says, you should probably go have an apple or something. How do you get through that?
Yeah, it's a great question on that. What I see is that the thought that comes to mind is the want to. It's the want to is raising my elevated level of what is my want to, like, what is it that I really want to do deep down within me? If I have a stronger, clear want to, so if it's running the marathon, if that is my stronger want to, then my actions and my behaviors will go in alignment. Now, we're not robots, right? Our body is gonna tell us what's really going on. Like if I got an injury or I'm getting sick or other things that are showing up, you got to listen to that. But the idea is that if I focus my attention on stopping procrastinating or not procrastinating, we don't hear, our brains and our bodies typically don't pick up on the stop or the don't procrastinate. We pick up on procrastinate. And that becomes where our attention goes. Like for me, like that's what happens. If I consider those ideas, like that's where my attention's going. That's where my focus is going. And so that's where my actions and behaviors are going. But if I elevate the want to of excitement of what am I going to get from this training today? How is that going to serve me? How is it going to serve my son? How is it going to serve my clients? And if I elevate my want to and I answer that question, like that becomes my area of focus. And then what I noticed for my own life is that those things that I used to procrastinate on or try to stop doing, like they slowly like quiet down. They sometimes they still show up, but they're not as present. They tend to go away. They tend to dissolve because I'm taking my attention off there and I'm raising it to a higher level want to for me.
That makes sense. Mike, why is the first thing you do is try to get into a state of gratitude?
I believe it's the ultimate state of receivership for this life energy that I have today, for being alive. And when I'm in a state of receivership and giving thanks to my Creator for the breath of this day, it's giving back to Him what He's given me. It's a way of giving thanks. And what I've noticed for me is it puts everything else into perspective. It, like the stuff, like as devastating as it is with the war out in the Middle East, it puts things into perspective. It's like, what can I do to show up here for today for myself and my family and everybody I communicate with? It gives me a different lens. And so when I come as a gratitude, I'm looking at everything from that place of gratitude. I'm bringing my conscious focus. I'm bringing my time and attention to that.
What does that sound like for you? Like you're in your meditative state. Like, are you out loud saying what you're grateful for and thanking God, or is it an internal monologue?
It's a few different ways. Sometimes it's an internal monologue and prayer. Sometimes it's through routine prayers. Sometimes it's just through a quiet state of, I feel it, like there isn't even a monologue. I use some of Joe Dispenza's meditations as well. And I get into the place of the feeling of gratitude for the big and the little things. And it's not necessarily for things physically that are being done. Kotsis said this in one of his interviews from The Gentle Art of Blessing. He had a book review on that in the Ultimate Coach site, and it was just so beautifully done. And it's the gratitude is blessing for the sake of the blessing alone. And I bless my clients, I bless my family, I bless this home, I bless this land.
Do you say that, like, I bless my family, I bless, or do you actually say something else to bless them?
No, I say that. I feel it. Sometimes it comes out in a little bit different words.
Yeah.
But it's that energetic feeling of that. And
What does
blessing
it mean to bless
of giving
somebody?
thanks.
What does it mean to bless somebody?
What it means to me is wishing them well in the deepest sense of their health and well-being, and giving thanks for their life, giving thanks for their presence. And so I'm using a couple of words interchangeably, the blessing and the giving thanks, and the gratitude for that. Because when I can feel that gratitude and that blessing, and my blessing is a prayer. It's a prayer for their well-being, for their life, for their health, for them to see something they haven't seen before, for their inner peace, for their relationships. So I'm thinking about them in their specific, whatever I know about them or whatever occurs to me, it's getting specific about those things.
It's interesting. I read the General Art of Blessing not too long ago with Kusudi's group, and the next day I like started it. I started the book. Next day I'm running. It might have been like a 6-7 mile run, and I run early in the morning. Like the neighborhood's asleep. It's like 4:30, 5 a.m. I'm running around, and I just start blessing the neighbors who I know. And I got to tell you, it felt really, really good. Like I showed up in a different state almost. It's took my focus off me, placed my focus elsewhere. I consciously thought about the good things. That day, it was actually first day of school. I remember it because I was running around like, "Hey, I bless. I hope your kid has an amazing day at school this year, and or yeah, has the most amazing year at school." And anyway, it felt really, really good. I was just curious to hear your thought on it.
Yeah, your last two words really jumped out to me as a way of summarizing it. It takes the focus off of me and what's wrong with what's happening today in my life and gets me into a place of service.
Mm.
It gets me in a place of looking out and serving. What can I do to help? As opposed to personalizing something about me.
Do you believe bad things happen?
Bad things. So bad things. I think we live in a fallen world. I know we do. And I know that inherently everybody is good. And we screw up, we fall, and we make mistakes. Sometimes they're habitualized into a way that doesn't seem good. I believe there's a grander plan, and I believe there's a grander purpose that everything is being used for in terms of, I don't know what the answers are. I mean, just like we were talking about before, it's like, how do we understand the one who designed who we are? It's like, I don't know. That's beyond my pay grade.
Yeah.
But when I look at it from an
that.
eternal perspective, like there's a reason for everything that happens. So if it's bad, I'm looking back at it. What can I learn from it?
I'm of that thought through what I've learned that things happen and then we assign a meaning to them, right? That was good. This is bad. I also like to think that everybody is doing the best they can, coming from the right place. But then this week has just been so heartbreaking for me because I have family in Israel. I have friends who are serving there right now. And I can't even fathom the fact that they found babies with heads cut off. Like, where's the good in that? Or how can you not look at that and say, that's some fucked up shit and that's pure evil? Like, how do we not, you know what I mean? Like, I can never. So before this atrocity happened, when I would talk to people about, nothing bad happens, everything is good, and we just assign meanings to it, they would say, well, what about raping or murdering kids? And I don't know how to answer that for them. And I love your humbleness when you said, yeah, I don't have an answer for it. But I was just wondering, in your personal growth journey, like how would you answer that from your belief system?
Yeah. So my intellect, my brain, it can't rationalize it. Like it can't. Like I'd say, like there is no scenario where logically that feels right to me.
Right.
And so all I know is that we're here for a purpose. We're here on purpose. And that purpose is bigger than me. And if I play my part in what that is, my journey is living as a blessing. And how that ripples out, how that can help with the healing of the tragedy that's going on in this world. I know for sure it won't happen if I perpetuate that, if I perpetuate judgment if I perpetuate fear in my life and my household. So I believe this comes back to every single person. It comes back to, we go back to Viktor Frankl, right? You have the event and you have the response. In the middle, there's a thought. When we go from event to response and we have no space in the middle, we can't even we don't even realize there's a thought. So the missing link is in that middle. And the more space I can create in my life, in the people that I encounter, to back up and give a little bit more space to see that thought, it's going to help you to at least question it. Right now, what's going on in Israel, there's zero. I can tell you for certain there's no space. There's event, response. Like there's maybe not even awareness of that middle piece. Can I solve it? No, I can't solve it.
Which is ironic because the reason the book Man's Search for Meaning came out is because of the Holocaust. Because he was a prisoner. He was in a prison camp. Yeah, it's a lot of emotions, a lot of event response. That's a really, really good way to put it. Yeah, and you're right. So help me understand, Mike. Let's just bring it back away from this tragedy and help me understand the importance of being in the now. Like, why is that important to you?
It's because it's all we have. It's as a possibility. So looking at the future is made up in my mind. So I make a meaning. So go back to meaning. I'm making a meaning of what's going to happen or what's not going to happen, or I want to prevent from happening or accelerate happening. That's all happening in my mind. And what happened in the past is whatever I remember of it. It isn't happening right now. And so if I'm caught up with worried about where we're going or trying to prevent something from happening again from the past, or trying to bring something from the past into now, I'm missing what's right in front of me. My conversations with my kids, they know, especially the younger they are, they know if I'm listening or not.
Mm-hmm.
They'll say it, like as adults, like we know it, but we don't act the way our kids do because they don't have any filters yet. And they'll just say, Dad, let me show you this video. I want to show you this video that I made. My daughter just did that last night. I was putting together a outdoor heater. And I was like, I'm putting these last two screws. Like, Dad, I want to show you this video. It's like, okay, hold on. And it's like, Dad, I want to show you this video. I'm like, okay, so Dad, look. It was okay. I'll just drop it. I'll look. So they know, and because that is what we ultimately remember, I think, is the way we feel when we're being listened to and being present. And the more that I slow down, the less I have to rely on like the strategy or the plan or the thing, the more okay I can be from the place I'm coming from. And as I'm more at peace from that place that I'm coming from, things just tend to work out.
But there's a process to figure out what place you want to come from. And that process, I don't know the full process, but the reason for coming from a certain place is so that you can get to the certain place. Or let me rephrase that. It's so that you can already have the certain place now, right? But you had to be in a past moment realizing what place you want to be in at some point. Does that make sense?
So it's less about being physically or attaining something. So different than again, the way that I related to setting and achieving and moving forward. But yeah, so coming from that is something with creating my document. And for me, it's noticing the judgments, the irritations, the irkings, the annoyances that I was creating and didn't realize it. And so another way of saying it is things where I'm not in acceptance with others, or I'm not in acceptance with the world and what's happening, or I'm not in acceptance with something within me, about me. As I start to notice what those things are, it is kind of similar to the procrastination conversation we had a little bit ago. It's that the more that I notice and wake up to those things, and I come from a place of creating of who am I underneath all of that? Like all that noise that just gets piled on. And I think it happens from childhood as we start to conform and figure out our place in this world. Like we're so pure and open and a sponge. And then we get all these constraints just starting to be put on us. And so we start either conforming or rebelling to those constraints. And that becomes our way of being. And we don't realize that we put these constraints on ourselves in the way that we show up. And so the more that I can wake up to what those habitual ways of being are that I have been, and wake up to forgiving myself for those, and then coming from a place of creation of what is really true underneath that, of how we really came into this world, of what purity of God's creation we really are. And the best we can do, the best I have done is in language, which itself is somewhat limiting, but it's a great start. And so what I have is like, here's my document. It's called Created Freedom. It's created freedom is a place to come from. It's a place not to get to, but believe and see and focus my time and attention of where I'm already free. That's what it expands. And so all the other things like the procrastination conversation start to dissolve or drop just kind of on their own. And so for me, that's what I mean by coming from that place of presence. And then things show up like cool. And things happen not in my plan. Cool. Like I just don't have the energy charge around the outcomes of those the way that I did in the past. I don't make them mean something about me, a defect of what's wrong with me. And I didn't even realize I was doing that.
That's huge.
Until I did.
That's huge. Can we hear your document?
Sure. Do you have about 4.5 minutes?
Yeah. Do you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's do it.
I am creation. I am eternal. I am divine love and infinite wisdom with nothing on my mind. I'm a living icon and disciple of Jesus Christ. I am a peaceful warrior. I'm healthy, strong, fit, attractive, and brilliant. I am fun, joyful, playful, silly, and goofy. I am that I care for my health and well-being first to serve others full out. I am that I love and honor my body as a holy temple. I am that my presence is enough, only always. I am free and I fully trust myself to always know what to do. I am that my ideas are priceless. I am that I take instant action on the whisper of inspiration. I am unlimited and I create effortlessly through the Holy Spirit. I am that I love, I serve, and I create miracles every single day. I am that others are impacted immeasurably through me. I am that I have all the resources to speak impactfully without preparing or practicing. I am that I effortlessly create freedom with those who have the entrepreneurial spirit, their family and their team, creatively serving massive impact in the least amount of time. I am that I ignite the renewal of the family unit on this planet. I share openly and vulnerably our perfectly imperfect journey of creating and being family together. I am a powerful healer. I am that I boldly see the simple truth above all else. I am that I give generously of my time, my talent, and my income to church, individuals, and causes I care about most. I am open to receiving blessings, gifts, and acknowledgments from others. I am that I joyfully experience the acknowledgement of others as acknowledgement to myself. Get that. I am that I bless everyone, everywhere, always, for the sake of the blessing alone, never seeking or expecting anything in return. I am my word. I am that I need nothing from anyone. I am that I do not work for money or appreciation. I am that I acknowledge the good, the holy, and the beautiful in everyone and everything. I am madly in love with my gorgeous, brilliant, and beautiful girlfriend, Jill, who is my best friend, soulmate, and bride of 16 years. I curiously seek to learn something new about her every single day. I'm a loving, engaging, present, fun, and thoughtful father for my 4 beautiful children, Zachary, Eleni, Samuel, and Penelope. I love each of them for who they are and as they are. I am that I see everyone as a living image of God. I am aware of other people's point of view, and it does not impact my ability to love them. I am that I love and honor others as doing the best they can with the thinking that feels real to them. I am that no one is worthy of my judgment, starting with me. And everyone is worthy of my love, especially me. I am fully present in this moment, right now. Right now. And right now. I am that I accept what is with love. I am that I let go of my stuff with ease, relaxing and releasing over and over and over. I am that I allow the Holy Trinity to lead me, guide me, listen through me, think through me, speak through me, act through me, feel through me, and love through me. And most importantly, I'm graceful and forgiving of myself when I innocently forget who I am. This is who I am, Eric. My parents gave me the birth name of Athanasios Michael. This is more real to me than my name.
Wow. That was powerful. I feel an energy shift in my room listening to that, because those aren't affirmations. How long did it take you to create that?
It's ongoing, but initially, probably about 4 or 5 months.
Wow. Mike, I've taken a lot of your present moments today, and I want to just say thank you so much. I feel like we could do a whole other episode about who you were and before you became who you're being now. How can people get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more about working with you, or learning more about, what you just did right there and becoming and being somebody they truly want to be?
Yeah, thank you. Best way is to reach out through my website. It's my name, MikeKotsis.com, KOTSIS.com, and contact information is on there.
You delivered, man. Still feeling that. That was really good. Mike, thank you so much for being here. Loved our conversation. You gave me some really good points, some things to think about, and you got a new fan and follower moving forward.
Same here. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate you, and thank you for this time. It's been a blessing to me.
Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye, everybody.